When my parents told me to pack, they didn't raise their voices. That's what I remember most. My mother had a spreadsheet open on her laptop, tuition projections, housing costs. My father stood behind her like a quiet endorsement. "We can't afford to split everything," she said. "Your brother has more potential in his field. We have to think long term." My brother stared at the table. The college fund my grandparents started had both our names on it. That night, it became his. "The car is registered under us," my father added. "You won't need it if you're figuring things out." Figuring things out, that was the phrase they used when they didn't want to say I was the weaker investment. I packed while they watched. Not to intimidate me, just to make sure it was done efficiently. My brother didn't come upstairs. When I walked past his room, my old desk was already inside. They were converting my space before I'd even left. I stepped outside with one suitcase and a phone at 23%. No one stopped me. The first year blurred into night shifts and borrowed couches. Pride kept me from calling home. I told myself I wouldn't beg for a place where I'd already been evaluated and declined. I enrolled in community college because it was cheap and close to the warehouse where I worked. I didn't pick something glamorous. I chose business operations because it sounded practical and employable. There was no breakthrough moment. No mentor who saw genius in me. Just steady attendance, passing grades, showing up early. When you grow up being compared, you start measuring yourself differently once the comparison disappears. I stopped asking whether I was impressive. I started asking whether I was competent. Competence is quieter, but it stacks. By 21, I'd moved into a studio apartment. By 22, I'd transferred to a state university using scholarships and savings. By 23, I had an internship at a mid-sized logistics firm. They didn't care about my family. They cared that I finished projects on time and didn't make excuses. After graduation, I stayed. Over time, I shifted into talent acquisition. I discovered I had a sharp eye for preparedness. Who had actually done the work versus who had been carried. It wasn't cynicism. It was pattern recognition. At 22, I had been the RA Somme with gaps. At 26, I was the one reviewing them. The morning his application appeared in the system, I almost didn't notice the last name. Then the address confirmed it. Same house. Same zip code. His GPA was strong. Internship at a reputable firm. Recommendations polished. I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. I could have reassigned the interview to another manager. No one would have questioned it. But avoiding it felt like unfinished business. So I kept it. Interview day. He walked in with the kind of confidence that comes from doors usually opening. The smile was automatic until his eyes reached the end of the table. It didn't vanish dramatically. It faltered, tightened, recalibrated. I nodded once, professional. "Good morning, have a seat." 2 other panel members were present. HR policy required structured scoring. Standardized questions, consensus on final decisions. Process protects everyone. He answered the first few questions well. Rehearsed, smooth. I asked about a gap between internships. He hesitated, shifted in his chair. "What did you do during that period?" I asked. "Personal time," he said. "Family support." I made a note. Neutral. When I asked about leading under pressure, he described a group project where conflict had been resolved by a professor stepping in. I waited for more. There wasn't any. He was bright, but untested. The interview ended with polite handshakes. In the hallway, he lingered. "Did you know?" he asked quietly.
Yes.
He studied my face like he was searching for resentment. Or satisfaction. "Is this fair?" he asked. "It's structured," I said. "You're being evaluated the same way everyone is." He swallowed. For a second, I saw the version of him from 4 years ago. Protected by decisions he didn't fully make, but benefited from anyway. Back in the conference room, we compared notes. The other managers had similar concerns, limited evidence of independent problem solving. Strong academics, but thin resilience. We voted. He wasn't the top candidate. The offer went to someone who had worked full, time through school and built projects from scratch. I signed the paperwork without hesitation. 3 days later, my mother called. "We heard you were involved," she said carefully. He was very upset. I was on the panel. A pause. "Well," she continued, "surely you could have helped." There it was. The old framework. Resources allocated strategically. "We have hiring criteria," I said. He didn't meet them this time. Silence stretched longer than usual. "You've done well," she said finally. It sounded less like pride and more like recalculation. "I worked," I replied, not sharply, just factually. My father didn't come to the phone. That evening, I stayed late at the office, not because I had to, because I wanted the quiet. 4 years ago, I left their house with a half-charged phone and the understanding that I was expendable. Now I sat in a glass-walled conference room with my name printed on the hiring roster. There was no rush of victory, no urge to call anyone and announce the symmetry of it all. What I felt was steadier than that. They had chosen where to invest. So had I. The difference was, what I built couldn't be reassigned.